Good day everyone, so Ayaka's rerun is just around the corner in version 3.5, and this then begs the question of whether you should go for her Constellation 2 or not. Now this is not really the point of today's video because honestly I do not know what the answer is for you, but instead I want to talk about Ayaka C2 from a technical perspective, so hopefully this will be kind of interesting. So let's just quickly remind ourselves as to how Ayaka's Elemental Burst works. So when she casts it, you hit the enemy about 20 times in a span of 5 seconds with her Elemental Burst, and that is kind of quite a lot. And once you upgrade from C0 to C2, you'll notice that you not only hit the opponent now 20 times, but you now have two little mini like little swirling blizzards, I don't know what you want to call them, that also hit the enemy for a total of 60 times if you can land all of your shots, that is. And this is quite interesting because from a ICD or an internal cooldown perspective, this has some very peculiar implications. Now, if you're not familiar with what ICD is, let me just give you a quick rundown or explanation. In Genshin Impact, when you hit an opponent with an attack, let's say you're hitting the opponent with Kokomi and she now applies like Hydra onto the enemy, you cannot apply Hydra on every single hit. So in Genshin Impact, when you hit an opponent, you can hit them with a Hydra attack, but you will not always apply Hydra. There are certain rules that govern how often you can apply an element onto an enemy. This is called the free hit rule or the 2.5 second rule, and it's what we call internal cooldown. So let's say you're attacking an opponent with Kokomi. Your first little fish that hits him will apply Hydro onto the enemy. Your next two fishes or next to normal attacks will not apply any Hydro, even though you're hitting him with the fishes, but your fourth attack will apply Hydro once again. And this is what we call the free hit rule. Now with the free hit rule, there's another rule that's also at play here, and that is the 2.5 second rule, which effectively just then resets your sequence. So it resets the internal cooldown for when you hit the enemy. So basically, if you hit the enemy right here and now 2.5 seconds have passed, if you now hit the enemy again with Kokomi, you will apply Hydra. So you can see here sort of how it goes. I kind of like put a bit of an example sequence here. So you hit the enemy, you hit him once, the next two times you don't get any Hydro, the fourth time you get Hydro. If 2.5 seconds has now passed and you hit him again, well, congrats, you've also now applied Hydro once more. You can see here in this example from 2.5 to 5 seconds, if you hit the enemy subsequently, you don't apply any Hydro until, well, once again the 2.5 seconds has passed, or in this case, if you've now hit him more than like 3 times. So this is what we mean by ICD. So what does all of this mean for Ayaka? Well, at a C0 level, we can actually compute the number of times that she applies cryo onto the enemy, and the way in which we do this is very, very simple. So Ayaka hits the opponent 10 times in a 2.5 second interval, and of course another 10 times for a total of 20 times as stated in her Elemental Burst. The first hit of her Elemental Burst will obviously apply cryo, the second and third will not because of the free hit rule, and then the fourth hit, the seventh hit, and the 10th hit will also apply cryo. Now the 2.5 second rule will effectively reset the entire sequence such that your 11th hit will now also apply cryo, and then we get back to the 3 hit rule of 14, 17, and then finally the 20th hit. So basically, if you work it out precisely, Ayaka at C0 gets 8 instances of cryo that she can apply onto the enemies. So what happens now at C2 where you get these two extra little mini tornadoes or blizzards? Well, it's kind of interesting because Ayaka's Elemental Burst shares ICD with all of the little hits. So if you hit all of the opponents, then each one of the little blizzards counts towards the free hit rule. In other words, your first hit of your Elemental Burst has like the big one and the two little mini ones, so you apply cryo and the two mini ones hit the opponent, and this means that the second wave will also now apply cryo. So if you can think about it, your big burst applies like cryo, your two little mini ones hit the opponent 2 times, so they contribute towards the free hit rule, and then the next one of your big hits or your big wave hits or whatever from Ayaka will also now apply cryo, the two little mini ones hit, and so on. I know it's a bit more technical, but that's probably the easiest way to think about it. Basically, in short, you get to hit the opponent if you hit him with all of your elemental burst 30 times, if you count all the little instances, and basically each of these little 30 hits all contribute to the free hit rule for a total of 10 instances of cryo. And of course, in total, this means that you get 10 instances here, 10 instances here, for a grand total of 20 instances of cryo over Ayaka's elemental burst. So that is quite an upgrade. Well, it's not. In fact, I kind of lied to you here. It's not 20, it's actually 16. But how does this work? Well, this is the interesting thing about ICD. The assumption we've made is that you can continuously apply an element in a 2.5 second window as long as you just keep on applying the free hit rule, but there's actually a bit of a limit to this, and formally this is called the sort of like gauge sequence in theory crafting, sort of like circles. There's a bunch of math as you can see on screen, but for our purposes all it means is that there is an actual hard limit to the amount of times you can reset the sequence for you to apply an element before the 2.5 second rule is over. And this limit is actually 8 per 2.5 seconds. So I'm going to put this here in black. You can only at most hit the opponent 8 times or apply an element 8 times in a 2.5 second window, and that is assuming of course you've got the standard ICD engage and so on, before any additional instances do not apply any cryo. So basically the first 8 here of Ayaka's waves with her C2 will all apply cryo, but after that you will have no more cryo that's being applied, even if you apply the free hit rule. And the same then goes for this sequence as well. You only get a maximum of 8 instances, so in total Ayaka can only give you 16 instances of cryo over the 5 second window. So yeah, that has been kind of interesting. You wouldn't have expected it if with just like a bit of a sort of superficial level understanding, but it does kind of make sense that the devs would kind of rate limit you. This is also obviously for balancing purposes, but still, from my perspective, going from 8 to 16 instances with a constellation is still kind of bonkers. So that means in theory, if an opponent always has like a pyro aura on him, Ayaka would be melting like there would be no there'd be no character that'd be able to match her in terms of output in that case. But yeah, that has been it, guys, for what I wanted to discuss on Ayaka C2 and a little bit of technical nitty-gritty behind it. I found it very interesting when I kind of read this, but there are obviously some interesting implications to this. So obviously, if you hit an opponent like 7 times here, you miss 2, and you then sort of hit him a final time with your C2 Ayaka, you can still get like your 8 sequence, you can still get your 8 instances. It doesn't matter how, but typically because it happens so fast, in Genshin, you either hit the opponent with your entire Ayaka burst or you only hit him partially. It's very rare that you'll get something like, oh, you hit him for 7 times and then 2 times miss and then you hit him. That's typically not going to happen. In practice, I would caution you to understand that you might not always get the full 8 or 16 instances off, particularly if an opponent moves around a lot. But if they do have a Hydra aura on them, then it's mostly just going to be a free lunch for you to get all 16 instances off. And this is why Ayaka is so good against the Abyss Lectors, and that like that one that like spins around and it's like so annoying, that little Hydra one. Yeah, she just absolutely destroys him. But alright guys, that's it for what I wanted to talk about. Thanks for watching. Cheers.